Today, we're digging into a fascinating business case study. It's about a tech giant that built a $500 billion empire by, get this, rejecting the one thing most tech companies can't live without: advertising. Yeah, we're talking about Tencent and its wild toll booth strategy for the internet.
All right, let's just jump right in. When you think about the big tech companies in the West, like Meta or Alphabet, you're really just thinking about one thing: ads. Their entire business is about selling our attention. But Tencent, they just completely flipped that script. An absolutely staggering 80% of their revenue has nothing to do with ads. So the billion-dollar question is, how on earth did they pull that off?
So here's how we're going to break down their playbook. First, we'll look at their core philosophy, which is pretty unconventional. Then we're going to unpack the three massive strategic pillars they built: their super app, their global gaming empire, and their super smart approach to FinTech. And then we'll wrap it all up by putting their toll booth model head-to-head with the billboard model we all know.
Okay, so let's get into the big idea here. Tencent looked at the internet and made a decision. They decided they didn't just want to be another car on the digital highway. No, they wanted to own the highway itself. And, maybe charge a little toll for everyone who uses it.
They actually have a name for this model: a digital utility. It's a great way to think about it. It's like your power company or your water company, but for your digital life. They provide services so essential that they can charge for them directly. And does it work? Well, that number there, $23.9 billion, that's not for a year. That's what they made in a single quarter. Just incredible.
So how in the world did they build this thing? Well, it all started with their first huge strategic move, and it was centered on WeChat. Now, they already had a monster of a social media app, right? But they made a game-changing decision to transform it into something way, way bigger. Basically, an operating system for your entire life.
And here's exactly how they did it. The big decision, as you can see, was to launch mini programs. These are basically lightweight apps that live inside of WeChat. Now, the thinking behind this was just genius. They asked, why should we just sell eyeballs to advertisers when we could actually enable and, take a tiny piece of all the real economic activity happening right here on our platform? The result? A gigantic, self-contained digital economy that Tencent gets to tax.
And if you want to understand the scale of that decision, just look at this number: $275 billion. That's how much stuff people bought and sold through these little mini programs in just 3 months. I mean, that's a digital economy bigger than the entire GDP of a lot of countries. And it's all happening inside one app. It's just mind-boggling. All right, next up is their second major strategic bet: gaming. They were already a beast in China, but they were smart enough to see some challenges coming, especially with new regulations at home. So what did they do? They decided to pack up their incredibly successful model and take it on a world tour.
The thinking here was all about playing defense. It was about de-risking the whole business. By pushing hard into international markets with games that people play for years, like PUBG Mobile, they basically built a safety net. It was a way to protect themselves from any regulatory surprises back in China. And the result? They started tapping into global markets with customers who have more money to spend, creating a whole new, really stable way to grow.
And here's the proof in the pudding, right? You can see the strategy is absolutely working. Their international gaming money is growing faster than their domestic business, hitting almost $3 billion in the last quarter alone. So this wasn't just about getting bigger. It was a really smart strategic diversification that is paying off big time.
Now for their third big strategic move: FinTech. For a long time, their goal here was pretty simple: get more users, get more payments, just more, more, more. But pretty recently, they made a really important change in direction. They started focusing on what they call high-quality growth.
So what does that actually look like? Well, the big decision was to stop chasing every last tiny transaction and instead focus on things that actually make good money, like wealth management services. The logic was simple, really. They're like, look, we already have the users, we have the tech, it's time to actually make some real profit from it. And that shift from just chasing volume to actually hunting for profit had an absolutely massive impact on their bottom line.
I mean, this slide just says it all, doesn't it? Just look at that difference. Sure, their overall revenue grew by a very respectable 8%, but their net profit, it exploded by 33%. This is like a masterclass in business strategy. It shows that once you've got that huge user base, focusing on making real profit can be so much more powerful than just chasing endless growth.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together and check out the final scorecard. After breaking down these three huge strategic decisions, we can really see what Tencent's toll booth model looks like when you put it up against the West's billboard model.
And this chart right here,
This is the answer to that big puzzle we started with. Advertising is barely a fifth of their business. Almost half of their money comes from value-added services, think gaming and social stuff, and another third comes from fintech and business services. They're not an ad company. They are a deeply diversified digital utility.
And the big picture numbers are just, well, they're staggering. Almost $24 billion in revenue in one quarter, all built on this incredible foundation of nearly 1.4 billion active users on WeChat. What they've built is an ecosystem that's not only huge, but it's also incredibly smart about how it makes money.
So if you take one thing away from this, let it be this. The toll booth model is about monetizing utility, not attention. It completely changes the game. It turns the relationship with the user upside down. With this model, you are not the product being sold to advertisers, you're a direct customer, paying for services you actually want and use.
And that brings us to the final big question for you. Think about it. With all the growing concerns around privacy and just plain ad fatigue that we see all over the world, which one of these models feels like it has stronger legs for the future? If you had to bet your company's next 10 years on one of them, which would you pick? The toll booth, which makes money from transactions? Or the billboard, which makes money from views? It's a huge strategic question, and honestly, it's one pretty much every business is going to have to answer sooner or later.